All right, going to speak with Adam Boothe at Lockheed QWERTY. It is the Stanley Cup Finals. First of all, how are you doing?
Great. I am so happy that Sneeze has decided. I've always pronounced it Sneeze. I've been talking to this guy
I
for
it's
months now, and that's how I've been pronouncing it. I have no idea. I should probably ask him what the true
I
pronunciation
did.
is.
It's nice. Like
It's nice.
nice to
Okay.
meet you. Like
Yeah. Do you
like
know what? Do you
nice
know
with a
how I got in touch with him, Nat? It was through Dota esports betting. He saw. I think he must have seen some odds market stuff, and he got in touch with me for Dota betting. And then I recognized his tennis stuff, and so we've been chatting for a few months now. It's been excellent. He really knows his stuff.
Yeah, he does. And a lot of people like how poetic was that? Was that describing how he likes? If I wasn't already a converted fan, I would be converted just by that sentence. So yeah, that was really cool. So Stanley Cup, how exciting! And I do like, and we're heading into the finals here, aren't we? What date's it being played?
So the first game is Monday, which is kind of crazy because most series there's a very short turnaround. So game 6 or game 7 will end, and there'll be maybe 3 days tops before the next round begins. With this one, I think the Bruins are going to be off for 11 days between their Game 4 victory against Carolina and Game 1 against St. Louis. So it kind of can throw a wrench into the routine of teams during the playoffs, where they're used to playing every so often. They're used to being on the road, no family distractions, no media distractions, no hype. They're just sort of in the zone with the boys in the locker room. And so we actually heard that the Bruins last night, or maybe it was tonight, they're having a inter-club scrimmage at the TD Garden to keep their players in game shape. They're having a scrimmage, which is very rare. I mean, it's sort of something that never happens. And there's been a lot of sort of back and forth whether this is a good idea. What if someone gets injured? It might have been last night, actually, and I'm sure it went fine. But yeah, so it's kind of a crazy duration for a break between series.
Yeah, and obviously, like Boston Bruins demolished the Hurricanes. How pressed were
Yeah.
you by their performance?
Well, I mean, I was impressed by it in the sense that they got the job done and the score differential was so lopsided through all 4 games. But in my preview article and before the series started, I thought Boston outmatched them in every area of the ice, and that's why Carolina would not be able to keep up with the physicality, not be able to deal with the sort of potent power play. And we saw their leader, Justin Williams, their captain. He was very undisciplined through the first 3 games of the series, took careless penalties, gave up, unnecessary power play goals where they were in close games early in the game, or sorry, early goals early in the game. And it was sort of like Carolina never got into the series. It wasn't the same sort of pace, high tempo, wave attack. And, Boston just took care of business. And Tuukka Rask was excellent as he's been through the whole playoffs. They didn't even play some of their starting players for the game 4. They gave them the rest because I think they were just so confident they could close it that they didn't want to risk the injury. They thought they'd give them the extra couple days, and they did. I mean, it was Bruins from start to finish. So I guess when you see a lopsided series like that, it's like seeing Golden State sweep, the Blazers. It's like maybe there were some close moments in the games, but there was never really any doubt once you saw the matchup that the Bruins would take care of it. So I don't think, even if the Bruins take this series, the Stanley Cup Finals, it will not be one lopsided like that. We will not see 4 3-goal leads by them in the first 4 games.
All right, so because obviously right now on the match, Boston Bruins 1.67. Is there value on that, or are you looking at taking the underdog here?
I took the underdog, and
Ooh.
I actually took them. So the St. Louis Blues series ended, I think, Tuesday night. I woke up Wednesday morning and saw St. Louis at Bet365 at 2.45, and I jumped on it immediately. because I hadn't done any sort of capping or looking into the actual matchup statistics, all that stuff. But I knew that number was too big, and it has come down. I mean, you can still get at Pinnacle for around 2.4. You can still find that close number. I think this should be a 1.8 Bruins to maybe a 2.0 St. Louis Blues price range. The Bruins have looked great, but so have the Blues. And if there's one thing in the playoffs that we've noticed, it's not how easy you win your games. It's who sort of gets there in the end, who gets the 16 W's first. So even though the Bruins look dominant in their last two series, they also faced teams that were not, I guess, of the pedigree of the Blues. They don't have the goaltending. They don't have the physicality. These two teams are very similar in a lot of areas of the ice, and that's why I have to go with the Blues. Because, and I said this in the article, if Bruins were starting on the road here and they were maybe 2.0 on the money line for the series, I would take them, because I do see this being a 6-7 game series, and I do think it's going to open up hedge opportunities, teams going down 2-1 at home and stuff like that. So that's the play right now, Nat.
That is the play. Well, so you're basically, it's St. Louis Blues is the play for Monday, is what you're saying. What about
no for the whole series?
Oh, okay. That was going to be my next question. How are you approaching match betting on the series?
And what I did, what I like to do, I should say, because we'll talk just in terms of this series, I will be taking both teams to win a game. I don't know when I'm going to start my progression. Either it's going to be Boston game 1 and St. Louis game 2, or maybe I'll start both of them game 1 at two different books and just run. I think I told you about this on previous shows. I like to play both sides in series where I think both teams are good for a game. This is one of those series. The probabilities of seeing a sweep are just so unlikely. These teams are both good on the road. And given the value of the Blues, I think you have to start a progression pretty soon here, because if they go 1-1, well, anyway, I won't get too much into the specifics of my method, but I do like to just get my one unit in on each team to win a game and then get off the series and kind of just enjoy the hockey. Yeah. It's a very profitable way. We don't need to chase games in games 5, 6, and 7 where, teams are more do or die, and we could see teams put together 2 or 3 straight wins. So I'm going to get the money in early on both teams. And I was talking to somebody about totals, actually, Chance, who's another Edmonton boy. He's from my hometown, and he's been following a lot of odds market content, which is great. We were talking about the totals, and he said a few days ago that he really thinks this is an under series, and I agree with him. Mm-hmm. These teams have excellent goaltending. I don't see many shutouts coming. I do think each team will be good enough for a goal or two, but I could see a lot of 3-1, 3-2 games. So if you can find either an under 5.5 for a decent price or a live under, let's say there's an early goal in the first period, jump on an under 5.5. I do think maybe the game 1 goes over because the teams will still feel each other out a bit. But I do like unders generally for the series. But I really don't bet a lot of totals for playoffs even. So take that with a grain of salt.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Under series as well. All right. So before we wrap up here, just let us know exactly. So obviously the game. Just to recap how you're betting. Obviously a Tuesday, the Monday match, and how you are betting the series.
So yeah, I took as posted in the article, I took Blues 2.45 at Bet365. I will be. If anybody wants, they can get in touch with me on Twitter for when I'm going to be starting my progressions. But I'm going to be running an ABC on both teams, either in game 1 or game 2, for each of them to take a game. So if you want more information, I did talk about this in the first article I wrote for the playoffs. It's pinned to my Twitter profile. But the sort of strategy there is the probability of teams winning at least one game out of 3 is greater than them winning that specific game that you think they're going to win. So instead of trying to cap each game of a series, you sort of cap the series as a whole, and then I could talk about it for half an hour at least. Just get in touch with me if you're interested in knowing how it works. But I do think the value is on the Blues. They're still being sort of underrated. They've been the hottest team since January. They by their record and by their defensive play. So I think that not only can they win this series, but there's also value on them to win the series.
Oh, very nice indeed. Now we're just quickly calling Larry. If you want to call Eric. Great. And one quick question, because obviously it's something that we like to play when we bet football. And you were mentioning about the totals going under. Obviously another market for Monday is anytime goal scorer. Is those kind of markets that you look at?
I know quite a few guys that have started playing these players to score props for games. I haven't. But I think it's something to look into, and I might do some off-season work into back testing sort of certain lines at the rate, and maybe running progressions on like a guy like Mark Stone, who had such a great playoff postseason in the one series he had for goals, or Couture. I think there can be value. I was going to say Unibet, as far as player props go, they put up their Conn Smythe winner, which is for the playoff MVP. And Tuukka Rask is the goalie for the Bruins. He's the outright favorite. But I would say if you think the Blues can win, there is value looking at Jaden Schwartz and Binnington, the goalie for the Blues. Either of them to take the playoff MVP award. So it has always gone to obviously a team that has got to the final round, so you don't have to worry about some guy on the Sharks winning it, but it usually goes to the winning team as well. So again, worth looking at the Blues players, because if they win the series, Schwartz or Binnington will be the MVP.
All right, wonderful stuff. Adam, a pleasure talking to you. Have a wonderful weekend. I've put your Twitter handle there for anybody who wants to follow him, ask him questions. Like he said, give him a follow if you aren't already. Best of luck, and I'll speak to you soon.